I'm going to share something that's been on my mind for a while, and it's an idea that's still somewhat in its infant stages of formation, and I'm still looking for ways to act upon it, but I want to share it with you anyway. So, I was thinking about like Bible camps and rallies and church retreats, things that I'd gone to growing up and just throughout my life. And I was thinking about how when you're in those environments, when you're attending those kind of events, how there's a much stronger spiritual focus. And honestly, by the end of them, more than once, I've just kind of felt this feeling of being much closer to God because of the environment that I'd been in. So at these events, these rallies or camps or things, oftentimes there'll be multiple sermons a day. There'll be classes. There'll be a lot of time to fellowship with other Christians from other churches and from other states. And it's all around just a much more spiritually focused environment. In some of these things, they will discourage using phones or things like that. I know growing up and going to camp, you weren't allowed to have a phone or anything. As a kid, I didn't actually have a phone, but it doesn't matter. So you were kind of set off from the rest of the world. You're not listening to what the rest of the world is saying for a few days or for a week or for whatever period of time. You're separate from the world. You're not listening to it. You're not worrying about the news or about daily life. And you're in this hyper-spiritual environment with other Christians talking about God. And so, like I mentioned, a lot of times after this, I would kind of walk away with this feeling of being closer to God, and I would almost describe it as like an inner fire. And something I recognized and saw as like, this is really good, man. I really wish this could stay around. But then often, as any of you who have gone to those things know, when you actually get away from that environment and you return to real life, it is more than easy to just fall back into the normal routine of things and forget that. And I can remember at multiple camps or rallies or things, there would often be a sermon. It'd be either like the last one or close to the last one, where there would be like teaching and hoping and praying that the people there would not go home and forget all the things they learned, but that they would keep going forward as if they were still at camp. So it's something other people have felt as well. But then you do get home and then you do go back to normal life. And so this is all kind of a big build-up, I guess. So along that idea, I asked myself the question a while back, what if we did not wait for a few times a year to have that kind of environment? What if we lived more like that all the time? What if instead of spending all of our free time doing whatever we want, what if we more often had Bible studies and we participated in more sermons and religious activities? What if we fellowshiped with Christians on a daily basis? What if we kind of recreated the environment of a rally or a camp, but instead of doing it a couple times a year, a few times a year, what if every week looked like that to some degree? I started asking myself these questions, and I also looked to the New Testament church and the early church and what it showed as an example, and I see a similar picture of people who are on fire, people who are devoted to living for Christ, and I see this view of them. They're meeting next to rivers to pray. They are meeting in the synagogue daily. I get this picture of like, a guy who has to work. He gets off of work, working in the fields or wherever, and then he goes to wherever the Christians are meeting that night. And he goes and spends his free time there. He spends multiple times throughout the New Testament, we hear of a group of Christians staying up long into the night, praying or teaching or encouraging one another. And that's not something I see nowadays. So what if we made our lives a constant revival, rather than making the majority of our lives predominantly focused on us? I don't quite know the answer to this question. I look around me and I see that is not at all what the church is like, this idea. And it's not at all what I'm like. And I'm not just someone who can just say, hey, we're going to do things this way, and then everyone does it because I'm not in charge and I don't want to be in charge. But I have the idea that I should start working towards something like this. And so what that looks like is I'm trying to find ways to incorporate more of this spiritual focus in my life by forming and hosting a Bible study, and potentially branching on to having multiple Bible studies, just so that my life looks a little bit more like this what if scenario. And as I get close to it, I have a feeling that I'll know whether or not it's something that would work and would be feasible. And I do want to make something clear here, because some of you might be like, hold on, you just made a video a little while ago that church attendance isn't important, and yet now you're trying to advocate for essentially meeting in some fashion every day. Well, yes, the attendance itself is not the important thing, and what I'm suggesting is not necessarily having a sermon or a Bible study every day, but much more regular fellowship with Christians, spending more time thinking about God rather than doing what we want and doing what's fun. That's what the idea that I have is. And so this is really just the thought I want to lay before you, is just this new idea of what if we lived life differently. I think to the song less of self and more of thee, whereas there's a progression from spending all of our time and all of our resources for ourselves and none to God, and then towards the end it is none for self and all for thee. What if we started devoting our life in a way that more reflected the last verse of that song, where we are living not at all for ourselves, but all for Christ? I'm inclined to believe that there is a way to live like that. And whether or not the idea that I have proposed to you is the way, I'm still going to have to find out, run some experiments, and see if it does work. In the meantime, I just wanted to lay it before you so you could think upon it as well, and maybe do something about it. Who knows? So this video has been pretty off the cuff and unscripted. I didn't really write anything for it at all. It's just something I've been thinking about for, well, especially for the past few weeks, but really it's been coming up again and again over a period of months. So I just want to leave you with that idea. Like, what if we didn't wait a few times a year for those kind of events to take place? What if we lived our life like every single day was a rally, and like our Christianity was as urgent as it is? What if?